What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HAWGsports.com. Arkansas has wrapped up spring football. Obviously, there's a lot going on with basketball in the transfer market, and Eric Musselman signing his new contract. Baseball team just won the series over Texas A&M and is the number one ranked team in the SEC. And we're going to talk about all that and more, and Keith Grayson is going to join us as well. It's all happening on Hawg Sports Live. All right, everybody, before we get started, I'm not going to go over the how to listen and all that stuff. Everybody knows how to follow the page and all that stuff, so be sure to do that if you haven't and leave us the 5-star review. But today is a free day at HawgSports.com. That's part of the 24/7 Sports Network for those of you who aren't familiar. And it's just a way of us saying, thank you for reading all of our free content, and here's our VIP content. So for those who aren't familiar with how we do things, we run a lot of free stuff at Hawg Sports. Generally, it's stuff maybe that comes out of a press release or stuff that comes out of a press conference, stuff that you can read elsewhere. We try to do it better than elsewhere, but it's generally stuff that you can get elsewhere. But thank you for reading all of that. And our VIP stuff is more stuff we put more research into, stuff that's maybe insider information or our recruiting coverage and things like that. So you can read all of that stuff again at Hawg Sports, and you don't have to do anything. We just left the door unlocked. You don't have to sign up or anything like that. Also, our message boards are free, our crystal ball stuff, all of the features that we have at Hawg Sports are free. Now, you can't post on the message board, but you can read everything on there today. So go check that out. You're going to enjoy it, and we're going to go over some of the stuff that we've done for VIP, including the last look that I did from Arkansas scrimmage on Saturday. I was there live in the press box watching the scrimmage. Came back, went over some of the old videos from post-game Zoom interviews, some of the old practice footage, and some of my old notes and all that stuff. And then, of course, rewatched the game on demand on SEC Network Plus, just to get a more in-depth feel for how things shook out. Put together a depth chart, 9 deep at some points. That's kind of what we say at Hawg Sports. We like to overanalyze everything, and we certainly did this with the red-white scrimmage. Just talking about quarterback first of all, really impressed the way KJ Jefferson played. I expected him to not have a very good game just because they were going against the number one defense, and I don't know. I just kind of thought that we've been talking about, they need a lot of work here and there, and it's kind of the opposite. They came out blazing. He hit that 36-yard pass to Traylon Burks, and really, when I'm watching, I was like, he faded away. But watch it on the replay, he had to fade away because Grant Morgan's coming on a blitz, and the fact that he had an all-SEC linebacker putting pressure on him and completed the pass to Traylon Burks, all-SEC wide receiver, against an all-SEC defensive back in Jalen Catalon, and put it perfectly on the money. The only guy there is not all SEC in that equation was KJ Jefferson. So I thought that was a really nice throw. And then, of course, the next play hit Mike Woods 33 yards deep into the end zone. He also had a nice 42-yard throw to Trey Knox later in the scrimmage, which I thought he was sacked on the play. I mean, the rules are touch sacks, and he was touched. He also had a 27-yard run where, he might have gotten into the end zone, lowered his shoulder, and went into the end zone of that, but he went out at the 11-yard line. I also thought he was touched on that one. So, good day overall for KJ Jefferson. What did he finish up? 6 of 11 for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns with a 231.4 passer rating. Also, Malik Hornsby on the other side of the ball, 11 of 18 for 144 yards and a touchdown. I thought he had his best practice that I've watched him so far. I wonder with Hornsby and Jefferson also, when they're able to incorporate quarterback runs, how dangerous those guys can be, especially Hornsby, and the fact that he is super explosive. Like, he can really, really leave some people in the dust. And Jefferson's like that too. And I mentioned, on my walk and talk afterwards that he came over to us, pretty close to us for the first time in what I guess we've watched 13 of the 15 spring practices have been open. And on last Thursday, he came over with all the quarterbacks and stuff, so you get a good close-up look. I mean, he looks huge. He is so big to be a guy that can move like that. So I love what I'm hearing about KJ from other players and from the coaches and, some of the stuff we've seen. I think all that is very encouraging. You never totally know what you've got, but I got to think that KJ, once they have like design quarterback runs and there's the threat of him doing that stuff, it's just going to open things up more for him. I mean, that's the hope at least, right? So I think one thing that kind of jumps out, and we talked about this a little bit too, but the rushing number, so the red team won 30-20. So the backup offense and the first team defense beat, the first offense and the first offense and the backup defense. First offense and the backup defense was white. First defense and backup offense was red. It gets confusing, but I think one reason you saw what they put up 228 rushing yards for the red offense. And the reason you saw that happen is there's just the biggest discrepancy in the game was the backup offensive line against the backup defensive line. Okay? And there's a few reasons for that. First of all, Bo Limmer, Brady Latham, those guys combined to start 15 games last year. Okay? Combined to start 15 games. The backup defensive line combined to play in 10 games. And that's 3 games from Marcus Miller and 7 games, mostly on special teams, from Eric Thomas. And that's it. I mean, so that's where there was a big difference. Plus, they went with a 4-2-5, so you had more players, on the first group defense versus the second. And it wasn't like people will hear me say that and be like, "Oh, is there a problem with depth on the defensive line?" But the real problem was you had Isaiah Nichols out, you had Jashad Stewart out, and you went with a 4-man front. So it was like you had really, to me, the top 3 available defensive tackles on the red team defense, and probably, technically the top 4 defensive ends. And Jashad Stewart wasn't even, available. So technically the top 4 defensive ends, but Eric Gregory was playing defensive tackle. So really the top 3 defensive ends and the top 3 or so defensive tackles all on the red team. So it wasn't just like the starting group and then the second team. They say it like that, but it's really more, third team with that backup defense, really overall, but specifically on the defensive line. So that's one reason you saw, I think, such a big discrepancy. You also had Shane Clennon, Ryan Winkle. Those guys have all been in the system a pretty good bit. And, flipping it over, even though you had what I kind of thought maybe 3 or 4 of the top 5 running backs on the white team on the starting offense, the matchup was just better, offensive line versus defensive line. Plus, you had Marcus Henderson starting at right tackle, who's a redshirt freshman who, until this past week, had been working as the backup left tackle the whole time. And he's facing Dorian Gerald, who I thought Dorian Gerald had a really good spring. I thought a lot of guys on the starting defensive line had a good spring. And Marcus Henderson held his own most of the time when it came to pass blocking, but there were some times in run blocking where he was just overpowered. Dorian Gerald's a 6-year senior. So there were some times where he was just overpowered, just outmatched in that. And, probably a little bit with his steps playing a role in that, versus, playing the left side versus playing the right side. So those are some reasons I think you saw such a big discrepancy. And, when KJ Jefferson was in there, the white team was winning. Jumped out to a 17-3 lead also. Moving forward, you had, you started sprinkling in some of the backup quarterbacks and, some backup skill players and stuff like that. But overall, I thought it was a pretty successful spring. You had over 18,000 tickets. I'm not sure how many people signed up, but 18,000 people signed up for tickets. It's probably fairly close to that, probably not quite 18,000. It was kind of cold, too. It was 52 degrees, felt more like 42 degrees, I thought, but pretty cold out there and overcast. So, as we just look at, obviously Traylon Burks did the things you think, you would hope he did. Mike Woods came out blazing. Trey Knox. Trey Knox has had a pretty good spring overall, and that's a guy that definitely fell off last year, but they need him to step up. And, he's going to get other guys back. He's going to get De'Vion Warren back. Jaquelin Crawford did some good things. There was a play I mentioned, the 70-yard touchdown pass on the first play of the second half from Malik Hornsby to Jaquelin Crawford. And, it's like he's throwing it as he's getting hit, as he's getting touched. there was a couple of plays, as I mentioned, KJ got away with that, and, Hornsby didn't. Otherwise, Hornsby's statistics would have been really impressive. Jalen Crawford would have had a really nice catch. So that's notable. Hudson Henry had, I think, just one catch, but he's had a really good spring also. In the last scrimmage, he had a couple of catches and some nice hits also. TJ Hammonds with 9 carries for 67 yards. Had a couple of fumbles. I thought he recovered one of those fumbles, but they gave it to they flipped it over to the other team. Now, Dominic Johnson is a guy that I want to talk about mostly at the running back spot because, and again, I talked about him a little bit on the walk talk, so I'm rehashing a little bit of this stuff. But to me, Dominic solidified himself as a running back because I was thinking maybe this is a guy you look at linebacker. But what I think he's impressed me with, and he's 6'1", 240, so he can bull over people. He's got decent speed. He's not just going to break off huge runs, although he had a 25-yarder and averaged 9.8 yards per carry. But his balance, I think his balance really stood out. And that's something that I think people don't talk about enough with running backs. I always talk about, does he break tackles when he's not doing anything? Do people just hit him and just kind of bounce off of him? And that happens with him. He doesn't have to make a move sometimes. He's really strong in the hip area. He had a nice spin move against I'm spacing on his name. Miles Slusher. I was wanting to say Malik Hornsby, but yeah, Miles Slusher. He had a nice – now, Miles Slusher also had a nice tackle on Dominic Johnson that went for a 3-yard gain. And we'll get to Malik a little bit – Miles a little bit here. But what Dominic does is he has really good balance, I think. And, I always talk about Cedric Cobbs, what made him a really good running back. I always had that great balance. There's a story, I believe it was Jim Brown, where he slipped on an ice cube or something and battled falling over for 5 minutes. Great balance. And that's what I see out of Dominic Johnson also. So encouraging there as a guy that can, help you. A big point of emphasis all spring has been third downs, third and short, getting to third and short first of all, and then converting third and short. And Johnson's a guy that can maybe help you get there. I think other guys like Rocket Sanders have so much potential at 6'2", 220, but there's just things that he's got to get better at from, just learning. And he's been playing other positions, just learning how to be a running back in the SEC. But the speed, the running ability, all that stuff is there. Just gotta polish it up, I think. And he has the summer to do that. And, another guy, we'll talk about some of the visitors and stuff, but A.J. Green was in attendance there watching. So, he's another guy who has a 10.38 personal best in the 100 meters, good size back, probably be about 200 pounds next year. So I think we pretty much covered the most of the stuff that I wanted to cover: offensive line, running backs, wide receiver, quarterback. Talked about tight end a little bit. Now, I want to flip over to, the defensive side of the ball, and we know what Arkansas has at linebacker. Defensive line, we talked about Dorian Gerald a little bit. And Zach Williams, who I mentioned, has really gotten a lot bigger. Matteo Soli probably could have had 2 sacks. I think he might have been credited with 1, but he kind of got robbed on one of those. Jashad Stewart was out, but Jashad Stewart's a guy that, has a really great motor at defensive end. And then defensive tackle, you didn't have Isaiah Nichols in there, who I think has had a really good spring when he has been able to be out there, but he's had a foot injury. Torian Carter's a guy that's come on for him. But they're still in the market for maybe another defensive lineman in the transfer portal. That's a possibility. And we talked about linebacker a little bit. Now, safety, they had just 4 defensive backs, and I think they're in really good shape with Monteric Brown. Now, Miles Slusher, to me, stood out on the second team defense. He felt to me, there might have been 3 guys you'd say are true backups on the defense, on the second team defense quotes. There might have been 3 guys. To me, Slusher was the only starter type. And he's not a starter because you've got Jalen Catalon, you've got Simeon Blair, who's had a really strong spring, you've got Joe Fouché. All 3 of those guys are technically starters, but Slusher is right there with them. He's just younger. And they worked him a little bit at cornerback. They actually just kind of they flipped Trent Gordon over to nickel from cornerback, which he's been working kind of both. But they used Miles Slusher at cornerback. I thought he played well there. And I think that might be a path for him to get on the field earlier. I think he might be able to push a guy like Hudson Clark for a starting spot. And it's an overall young group of safeties. So they're going to be back for the most part next year. Joe Fouché might move on, but he's got the option to come back if he wants to. He's a senior, but maybe that's regardless, Miles Slusher is going to be in the rotation at safety. He's going to play a lot. But to me, I think he has the speed. I've seen him on kickoff return just running straight, weaving through people. He's got the speed to play there. I think he's got the hips, coverage ability. But I thought, also at safety, he really stood out on the backup defense, on the red team defense. So maybe something to consider, working him at safety a little bit. Somebody else, I believe, made a little position. Oh, I think Malik Chavis might have worked some corner also. And he's been working safety all spring, but I think he worked a little bit of corner also. All right. We talked about that group. Yeah, nice spring for KJ Jefferson. I think right now you have, and again, you never know what you got when it's live bullets. You never know totally what you got, and we've seen a sample of him in the Missouri game. But I think you got to feel pretty good where you are right now with him. And not just, what we've seen on the field, but as I mentioned, some of the leadership stuff. He's kind of got a message for everybody before practice. And I'll say this too, you ask a player about, how's KJ looking? Oh, he's doing fine. He's doing good. He's a leader, all this stuff. But you can, when you do it, as long as I've been doing it, you learn to read body language. And I'm asking Jalen Catalon after the game about KJ, is he a guy that can lead you guys? And what you see is they scoot up. They get up on the edge of their chair. They can't wait for you to finish asking your question so they can answer it. It's like those nonverbal cues that you look for, because generally everybody's going to say everybody's doing great. You can be like, hey, name one guy that's standing out on the offensive line. Well, the whole offensive line is standing out. That's the kind of responses you get when you ask a player to name somebody who's standing out. But with KJ, you can tell, and you can tell with other guys. He can't wait to tell you about KJ, And that's the kind of nonverbal stuff that I look for, doing this as long as I have. So I think Curtis Wilkerson had a nice story on just a trio of standouts. John David White stood out. John David played pretty much with the second group the entire first half. I don't know that he came off the field the entire first half and then played a lot later, caught passes from several different quarterbacks, but I think he had 5 catches for 87 yards and a touchdown. Sophomore wide receiver out of Pulaski Academy, 5'11", 170. Who else did he have here? John David, Dominic Johnson, who we talked about. Chris Paul is another one. And to me, I've said this before, linebacker, got questions for 2022, but there's plenty of opportunities for guys to emerge because, linebacker, you're talking about Hayden Henry, senior, who didn't play Saturday. Grant Morgan, senior. Levi Draper. Technically, I guess Levi's a senior, right? Yeah, technically he's a senior. But, he could have a year back if he wanted. Bumper Pool, a senior, could have a year back if he wanted. But that's your top 4 linebackers in theory are seniors. So you need guys like Chris Paul, Andrew Parker, who we've talked about a lot over the years, to step up and be players. Marco Avant played just a little bit on Saturday. He's been injured most of the spring, but he was another early enrollee. But Chris Paul, he's 6'1", 240 or so, good-looking middle linebacker. I was actually watching Paul on Thursday. I was just thinking, I haven't watched him a whole lot. I'm going to just focus on him. And I mean, the second play when I'm watching him, somebody tips the ball up in the air and he has an interception. But, I think he moves really well. He's not a guy that kind of hops around or gets lost. You can just kind of see he's very patient. He keeps square. He gets low. I like what I see out of him physically and, just early on in his career. So he might be a guy to watch down the road. They certainly could use that because linebackers just – they've gotten think about how lucky they are at linebacker. Through recruiting and stuff, the years where they recruited a lot of linebackers, it hasn't worked out. I can go back to that 2016 class. You had Alexi Jean-Baptiste, who was moved to defensive end and then ended up leaving the program. Dijon Harris obviously panned out. Giovanni LaFrance ended up transferring out. And D. Walker ended up getting in some off-field stuff and transferred out. So that was like the last really big linebacker class, and you had one guy. Grant Morgan was in that class, but he was a walk-on. Hayden Henry was a blue shirt. So both those guys came in off scholarship, and Hayden in practice has been running ahead of Bumper Pool. So, kind of think Hayden's got a shoulder issue, so they don't do live stuff with him. They want to get his shoulder fully healthy. But, possibly your top two linebackers are guys that came in off scholarship. Bumper will probably end up starting, but they'll have a pretty good rotation with those three guys. And who knows on Levi Draper, who's just, he's been injured since the Georgia game, trying to come back from injury. Curtis Wilkerson also has a nice inside the numbers where he just breaks down all kinds of statistics. He's probably got 30 different number breakdowns here. An injury report, of course. So Devin Bush, who's been in a green jersey all spring, Kari Johnson, Kevin Compton. Kevin Compton played, actually, I believe. No, he didn't. Did he? I can't remember. Jashad Stewart was out. Jalen Williams, defensive tackle, is another defensive tackle that was out. Isaiah Nichols, obviously. Hayden Henry, I mentioned. Levi Draper, I mentioned. Devion Warren, who I mentioned. Colin Jackson, bless him, he's been injured his whole career at Arkansas playing tight end, but he's out. Colin Sutherland's another tight end who was out. Nathan Johnson was also out, another tight end who's a walk-on. Takias Crawford was out, and Dalton Wagner. So your two top right tackles were out, Dalton Wagner, Takias Crawford. And another thing with Marcus Henderson, he goes about 295, so he's the lightest scholarship offensive lineman. So not only was he moved from left side to right side that week, but also the right side usually going to be a more massive player. Takias is 355, Wagner's 325. So they're obviously a lot bigger than him, But I think that Marcus Henderson is your left tackle of the future when Myron Cunningham has moved on, which Myron Cunningham looked pretty good on Saturday also. Nobody talks about Myron Cunningham. That's a good thing. Visitors for the red-white game, I mentioned A.J. Green. You had Chase Lowry, Devon Manuel, offensive lineman, Cole Carlson, Terry Wells weren't able to make it, but they were planning on going. You got several of the 2022 commits, J.J. Hollingsworth, Dax Courtney, Caden Henley, James Joyner, Andrew Chambly, and a couple of other 2022, 2023 targets that were in attendance. Again, they can't actually talk to the coaches or anything like that, but they can go to the game and view it. Quincy Mcadoo, as we talked about, Quincy is committed to Arkansas. Decommitted from Florida State. Let's see here, Quincy. Decommitted from Florida State last week and then flipped over to Arkansas. Number 64 ranked wide receiver, number 5 overall player in Arkansas, 56 on the composite, 4 in Arkansas. Arkansas, Florida State, Auburn, Baylor, Houston, I think Oregon. I don't know if that's listed all. Oregon, Oklahoma, Miami, Baylor, Tennessee, Texas A&M, some of the offers that he has. So really nice addition. Here you see, can he play safety? Sure he can play safety. Nice interception there. Pick 6. Here he is at wide receiver. This is a jump ball. Can he get a jump ball? He's listed at 6'2", 175 on his profile. Danny has him listed at 6'3", 180, so not sure what he is. Quincy's a guy that we need to get an official 40 time on, especially in this day and age. And I'll say this about his highlight video. There's another interception for him. I'll say this about his highlight video. It could be cut up a little bit more. There's a lot of pre-snap stuff that make it a little, boring. And it's 24 minutes long, so it's all of his plays. It's not like a 5-minute, hey, here are my very best plays. Can he return? I'm not sure he'll return in college, but here he is, weaving through traffic, making a couple of moves, on his way to 6. Nice move there. I think if we just need to get a 40 time on him, as I've said before, or 100 time, I guess that's an official. So they can verify his speed. That's something that 24, especially in this day and age where you can't just go see everybody. I think that's something that we're waiting on 24/7 Sports to make him a 4-star commitment. Here's another one on a slant. Malik Horn, or why do I get Malik Hornsby, Miles Slusher, Quincy Mcadoo? Can't get my names right today. So Nice addition. That bumps Arkansas to the number 11 ranked class in the country. Now, they got to add some more ballers to stay at 11. They're like ahead of Alabama right now. But Arkansas has never been 11th in April. They've never had the 11th ranked recruiting class in April. So that's definitely notable. Good number of commits on board. Top commit right now is Miles Rouser, number 165 overall prospect in the country. Went up to Michigan to get him. So if Miles Rouser stays the number 1 ranked prospect in the country, what am I doing right now? The number 1 ranked prospect for Arkansas, if he remains in the top 1, Miles Slusher was number 1 for him last year. So that would be 2 years in a row they would get their top player would be a safety. 2 years in a row. I mean, there's a lot of inside jokes we have, like on the Razor's Edge message forum, which again is free today, free VIP day if you want to read everything on the Razor's Edge premium forum. But we have a lot of like insider joke stuff. One of them is like, can he play safety? On just about everything. Can he play safety? But Arkansas has recruited really well lately at safety. I mean, Jalen Catalon in the 2019 class, Miles Slusher, Miles Rouser. And that's not, including like Nick Turner, who's pretty much Nick has moved over to cornerback now. He's got a lot of speed, but he started the game as a true freshman. I think the last game of the year last year at safety. They've recruited pretty well at that spot overall. But Miles Rouser, Andrew Chamblee, Rashad DeBinion, who I call the cryptocurrency, sounds like a cryptocurrency, Quincy Mcadoo, all of those are like top 400 type players, ranked in the top 400 nationally. James Joyner, running back out of Little Rock Parkview, Eli Henderson out of Burns High School, Dunklin, Oklahoma, J.J. Hollingsworth out of Greenland, Dax Courtney out of DeWitt, and Caden Henley out of Shiloh Christian, linebacker. Those are Arkansas's commitments right now. 9 commitments, number 11th ranked class in the country, number 4 in the SEC. All right. Before we go much further, I want to get to my man Keith Grayson. Keith, for those of you who don't know, is the disgraced former founder and president of the Arizona Razorback Club. That's a great story if you ever want to ask him about that. Our resident Razorback fan. Provides unique insight, I think. Hopefully he picks up. You never know what he's up to. Three rings.
Hello.
What's up, Keith? How you doing, man?
What's up, man? This is the podcast?
This is the podcast. You're on live with HawgSports
Perfect.
Live right now. Today's a free VIP day, by the way, Keith, for all of our non-subscribers who want to check out what we've got at HawgSports. But I wanted to pick your brain a little bit, Keith, before we get into any basketball stuff. But I'm sure you watched the Red-White game. What were your impressions?
Watched a lot on the defense just to see if they were going to really add anything new to it because we ran a lot of base, drop spot zone coverage last year and didn't really get too exotic with it. And now they came out and they started using – obviously everybody's going to focus on the 4-down linemen, but we're also running a lot of 3 safety stuff. Yeah. Was that Zymos? Was it Zymos? You always correct people when they say
Zymus. I get corrected too. It's Zymus, but I'm pretty sure.
He smacked somebody, ran through a block and smacked somebody on a he showed up. Jaden Johnson showed up a little bit.
I like Jaden Johnson, yeah.
Miles Slusher probably had the best scrimmage out of all the defensive backs, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I thought he was everywhere. He had one tackle he missed on Dominic Johnson, who outweighs him by about 40 pounds or so. But I thought he also stuffed Dominic Johnson once. I made a comment earlier. To me, he was the only guy on the white team defense who looked like a starter, in my opinion. But, I think you're right. Zach Zymus played nickel some. He played safety some. We did not see – I don't think maybe in a couple of situations they ran 3-down linemen, but I think for the most part we saw just a 4-man front. And they've been running the 3-2-6 all spring predominantly. I don't even think they got into 4-down linemen until after spring break for the second half of spring. So, and that's one reason I think Pittman wanted to do it that way with the 3-2-6 just because – or excuse me, with the 4-2-5, just because they haven't done it as much. But what do you think of KJ?
No, I like KJ. I think that an element of his game is taken away in situations like that. Same way with, any of the quarterbacks really, is that if you take away his run game and say, hey, we really want to focus on this or you're going to get blown down and if somebody tags off on you with a pinky finger, that's not going to count as a sack in a real game. Like, it's going to take a lot more than that to bring him down. So I think that when you take away a dual threat quarterback's legs, I mean, in that game, especially with the way that the offense is run, where he's probably going to have an option to hand the ball off to the back, an option to, to throw the ball, and then the third option is him to take it and run. You're taking away 33% of the offense's game plan. Mm-hmm. So he looked good. I think, hopefully they'll get the blown coverages, because we were really just hitting some big licks on people not with their eyes not being in the right place on the back end. So I like KJ a lot. The thing is, like, I know people always talk about competition levels and where people come from, especially like in Arkansas. I know he's from Mississippi originally, but people bag on people or on recruits a lot of times, like, well, yeah, they're doing it, but look who they're doing it against. Like, the competition. Still, if you're going to throw for 9,000 yards in your career, you got to have an arm. Right. Like, it's the production level. And you mentioned all the times Zach Williams and Matteo Soli. They're not bad defensive ends. They're getting 20 sacks each in their senior year of high school. Like, at some point, it's got to click at the next level.
Yeah. I think that another guy that we didn't talk about a whole lot is Cade Renfro, who, to me, it feels like after the scrimmage, he's the new Dalton Hyatt. If you remember the red-white game a few years ago now, Dalton Hyatt had like a couple of good runs, and everybody was like on the Dalton Hyatt bandwagon. And Cade Renfro, I thought, showed a pretty live arm. I think he's got more talent than Dalton does, and is a better runner. But for a walk-on quarterback, I thought he showed some nice zip, some nice mobility that I haven't really seen him show all spring. But maybe he's a guy down the road that we could be talking about. I wouldn't say like, I made the Dalton Hyatt comparison. I just seen so many people like, hey, what about Cade Renfro now? But it seems like everybody on the team at quarterback has wheels now. John Steven, I don't think that John Steven has the arm strength that's going to carry him very far. But he makes some quick decisions. He knows what he's doing out there. But I think it's just, a lack of overall size. John Steven's listed at 5'11". I would say he's probably closer to about 5'9", to be honest. But Cade Renfro, he's one of those guys that's listed at like 6'3", but looks like he's a lot bigger. Kind of a long limb guy. But I thought he looked pretty good.
Yeah, Malik better step it up, because he's coming. I mean, usually there's controversy, and everybody's favorite quarterback is the number 2 guy. Want him to get more looks as starting quarterback, but I mean, my impression coming off of it was Renfro's probably the number 2 heading into the season, just because he looks way better than I expected. Did he ever see the field at Ole Miss?
No, I think he just redshirted, but I wouldn't say that quite yet, just because I think that Malik does some things that are kind of impatient. There were probably, I think he started off 4-7, and I would say all 3 of those incompletions all could have been intercepted by him. I just think that when he's able to, when they have design runs and stuff for him, that he's really going to challenge a defense into staying honest. And I've made the comparison a little bit like with Nick Marshall at Auburn, because he's got that kind of speed. Just like even Sam Pittman the other day said, when Sam Pittman was naming off like who he'd taken 6 furlongs, I think he said Oglesby, who he'd taken 7 furlongs. He was like, I think I'd take Traylon Burks, but I might have Malik Hornsby in there. And from what I've seen from him all spring is when he decides to turn it up, it's just zoom. I mean, he is just suddenly past everybody. And when that's what made Nick Marshall so dangerous, both as a runner, but also as a passer. Like, Nick Marshall wasn't a good thrower, but he still threw for 2,500 yards because everybody was scared to death of him running the ball. And Malik could possibly be something like that. And with this offense, and I thought Sam Pittman made a good point, with this offense, you're going to ask your quarterback to run a lot. And there's going to be times where somebody gets dinged up a little bit and they're going to have to come out of the game. You're going to need that backup quarterback to be reliable for you. But he is just a redshirt freshman. This is his first spring. I guess it's his first spring for a lot of guys, but it's his first spring, and I think he's got a lot of upside. But Cade Renfro definitely, I think, opened a lot of eyes. Saturday.
Again, in that type of setting, you're not going to see Hornsby in a game sit there and go, all right, here's my first read, my second read, get to the third progression, pat your feet, sit in the pocket. He's one is if it's covered up, he's gone. You know, that's what a real.
But that works kind of for the RPO game. I mean, what you're reading your conflict defender, right? And then you're either handing the ball off, or you're keeping it, or you're throwing it. So maybe that's something that could work for him. Maybe it's not like a situation where he's got to span the whole field, at least starting out. But I don't think he's going to have to. I think you'll get a package for him. And, you have KJ Jefferson, and then you work on your backup package. So keep it pretty limited for him. Let him progress at a good pace.
Yeah, and the whole thing is interesting to me. Like, I'm not – normally I come in for spring games. I knew that this was going to be – I got a little bit going on right now, so I couldn't make it down for this one. But there's not a whole lot to take away from it other than see kind of what the depth chart's looking like and see the younger guys get out there. They're not going to show anything. It's really hard to take stuff away from, what the scheme's going to be in the season and stuff like that, because I think they hold back a lot. But it was good to see Dominic Johnson break a couple tackles because we need a thumper. And everybody's talking about Rocket Sanders, who got some – it looks like he got a little bit of run at kickoff return. Mm-hmm. So trying to get his hands on the ball in different situations. But I think Dominic Johnson looked like one of the best running backs coming out of the backfield for the I think the Oglesby experiment may be coming to an end. But and TJ Hammond's
they'll have to just find kind of find ways to get Oglesby the ball, I think. He's not going to be a traditional running back, so they'll figure out something with him. But running between the tackles, I'm not sure is it. I know you're on the must bust, Keith. What do you think about this $4 million deal?
Well, the crazy thing is, normally when something's going wrong in my life, I blame it on Trey Biddy, and I do put a lot of emphasis on. I think you jinx everything in Arkansas sports. But you may want to take a little
I'm not
credit
a jinx.
Here.
I am not
you
a
are.
jinx.
No, you are. You pre-write articles and stuff about winning national titles and everything. So, all right. But I think everybody has to step back and look and realize that this basketball season was credited all to Trey Biddy because you hired Curtis Wilkerson. And once you finally got serious about basketball, I would look back and see what their record was since the hiring of Curtis, because that totally changed the game.
Yeah, so maybe Curtis is the anti-jinx then.
Yeah, something.
I'm still a jinx. Curtis was a great addition. For those of you who hadn't followed Curtis Wilkerson, he's at Kurt Wilkerson _ It's a terrible Twitter handle, but that's his handle. But go follow him if you haven't. He was in Nashville. He was in Indianapolis. He does the Hog Hoops live show, which is the sister show to this one. But definitely follow his. He does a great job covering basketball. So delivers a lot of insight. Got anything else you want to add, Keith, before we let you go?
Yeah, I mean, the Musselman contract was kind of expected, right? I mean, it wasn't I think everybody – my thing on it is, personally, I don't expect the guy to be here more than 4 years. Is that a bad thing to say? I expect him to win so much that he either takes an NBA job or, takes an NBA job.
I think he might be done with the NBA. I mean, look at the path that he's had since. It's kind of like a reinvent yourself type of deal. Like, he came back to college. He took an assistant coaching job in college at two different spots. I believe wasn't he at Arizona State and LSU? Isn't that right? And then took the Nevada job for 4 years. And to me, he's all kind of built himself to get to the major college level, like an SEC school like Arkansas, and then get to that second contract, which he has done now. To me, I think he's a college coach now. I think he gets it. I think he's got a good game plan for it. I think he fits well. The social media side of it that he does, he's so good at that. To me, that doesn't matter in the NBA. Nobody cares about your social media presence in the NBA. But in college, when it comes to recruiting and the type of fans you have in college, I think he's a better fit for the college game.
maybe that's just like me as a Razorback fan expecting, like we finally get to a certain point. I'm expecting it to go wrong somehow.
Right. Well, you know what?
And I think that's what everybody's reaction with the buyout.
If he gets it, if he gets an NBA job, or some people have speculated that maybe one day he goes back over to the Pac-12, which I don't know which jobs he would take there. Cronin just got an extension at UCLA, but there's some speculation that could happen, all that kind of stuff down the road. But to me, if he were to take another big job like that, that means he's had a ton of success at Arkansas and put Arkansas in a really good spot to move forward. And it's kind of like the same thing with Moses Moody. People are like, Moses doesn't need to go to the pros. Like, if Moses Moody's a lottery pick, that's a great thing for Arkansas. It's great exposure for Musselman, for Arkansas, for the whole thing. You're going to have great players who come into college are going to go pro early, and that's just the way it is. So if Moody gets drafted early, then that's nothing but great exposure for Arkansas. So
I never got the point people trying to tell people how to spend their money or make life decisions without ever meeting that person. So it's like, yeah, the kid's 18 years old and he's going to be a multi-millionaire here in a couple of weeks. Let him do whatever the hell he wants and wish him well and thank him for coming.
What do you? What do you think? What do you think of this buyout for Musselman? You pleased with the buyout?
Well, I think you probably put it best. Like, if he does well, it's going to be renegotiated in 2 years anyway, right? I mean, isn't that how they do contracts? So it's going to be renegotiated in 2 years. He has, like Juracek has said in the past, he has all the leverage because he's winning, and I think he used that in the contract negotiations because he knows that with that low buyout, there's going to be people that are suiting him for another job, and when that buyout comes around, or when that buyout comes down to $2 million or $1 million by the time they renegotiate the contract, and he's going to use that to be not the seventh highest paid coach in America, he may be top 3 at that point, depending on where Calipari and oh my God, I can't even say it. I haven't had any coffee.
It's pronounced Krzyzewski.
I haven't even had coffee yet. That's why I was like, this is the podcast.
Mike Krzyzewski.
There you go.
So, here's another thing, though, and what I've said is, so Arkansas is paying him $4 million a year, which is a top 10 salary now in the country. It drops to, after the last game of next season, it drops from $7.5 million to $2 million, which, $2 million, there's some big programs that say, that's not too bad. We'll go get him for $2 million. But to me, the real crux of it is the $4 million salary. So if somebody out there is wanting to say, hey, we'll pay you more than $4 million, because it's not going to be $4.5 million ain't going to get him. It's going to be $5 million or more, and then Arkansas is starting at $4 million. So you're talking about paying him $2 million and then paying him $5 million plus just to get him from Arkansas. So if you can do that in a top 10, with a top 10 salary already, more power to you. Hey,
right?
To me, that's as big a part of the buyout as anything. Plus, if we're talking about L.A. or something like that, or even San Diego's, he had University of San Diego in there. You're in the housing market. Keith, what's the difference in housing cost in Fayetteville, Arkansas versus Los Angeles?
Well, it may be getting a little closer than you think since everybody's leaving California.
True. Well, last check it was like 300%, so I'm sure it's still pretty big difference. And then probably I think it's like 110% more cost of living in Los Angeles versus Fayetteville, Arkansas. So that's that's something to consider.
And that pool of schools that are going to be able to offer all of those things is going to dwindle down to almost zero. I don't even know what the job is going to be at the end that could actually lure him away from Fayetteville. So that's I mean, it's all trying to keep everything in some sort of perspective, and it's all fresh. So anyway, thanks for having me back on the show, Trey. I need to talk to HR over 24/7 because I thought I was unfairly let go because of COVID. For all those wondering where I've been, Trey asked me to be on the show, and I always say yes. And then one time I said my whole staff is out with COVID, and I can't breathe into the phone without coughing. And he's like, "Oh, I can't get COVID over the phone. See you later." So thanks for that, buddy.
It's science.
On a little hiatus.
All right, appreciate you, Keith.
Later, dude.
All right, later. That's Keith Grayson. Keith is always very entertaining. He's been with us for a long time at HawgSports.com. You can read his stuff on the Razor's Edge message board, his random takes and outbreaks. And again, it is a free VIP day at HawgSports, so go check out our VIP content if you haven't done so already. Just a lot, like, I think let's see if I got a couple of examples here for you, what we got on HawgSports right now. I mean, there's like, first of all, the scrimmage breakdown. Some of the scrimmage stuff I've talked about, just a lot more in depth. There's an article from Danny with Nico Davalier, Davier. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Just where he breaks down the latest in his recruitment of Maumelle defensive linemen. Several of Arkansas's current commitments, talking about Quincy Mcadoo. You can read what they have to say. My Last Look, which I always call the red-white scrimmage extravaganza, where we overanalyze everything. My breakdown on Miles Slusher, everything that he showed in the red-white and what he's done to this point. KJ Jefferson and how he's checking boxes at Arkansas quarterback. Just, deep dive, breaking down everything that I've learned over the spring. My opinion on, we talked a little bit about the starting defensive line versus Arkansas starting offensive line, and the backup O-line versus the backup D-line, how that matchup went. Just a little more on the visitors from the red-white game. Danny West's Big Red recruiting board, for those of you who aren't familiar with that. Danny lists, all the real viable, not just a list of offers, but like who's really like reciprocating interest. Arkansas is really interested in listing them hot, warm, cold, a breakdown, with content on where the situation is, just painting the big picture, not only of the recruiting class, but also where Arkansas's roster is. It's a really nice look that we keep regularly updated. Just the official visitors for June, a couple more official visitors recently added. So just all that stuff, in our content side of things, and then, of course, engaging with our community, which is just as important to me as the content, our Razor's Edge VIP forum. So be sure to check out our free VIP day at HawgSports if you haven't done so. Throughout the day, I guess it probably I think they usually keep stuff on Eastern time, so about like 10:59 p.m. And I'll say this too. Usually when we do these free days, if you've been paying attention, we don't do them very often. It's very rare. But when we do them, usually follow it up with a little something special. Obviously we're trying to get you to see what we do. So usually follow up with a little special offer. So you might want to tune into that on Tuesday. Just a hint. CBS Sports already is doing their top 25 and 1 for next year. Arkansas, I think, was 12th last year. They've moved up to number 9. I've seen them as high as 5, I believe, or 4 or 5 nationally. And a lot of that's because of the job that they've done in the transfer market. Exceptional job, and probably not done yet. Curtis Wilkerson's got some nice breakdowns just on the overall roster. Curtis does such a great job covering basketball. Really timely addition. Not to toot my own horn there, but it was a nice timing to bring in a guy with Curtis's background. Curtis, for those of you who don't know, he's a former NAIA player. He's from McCrory, Arkansas, so he grew up in Arkansas, but he went to St. Louis to play NAIA. Also has coached on the NAIA level, was an interim head coach on the NAIA level, and he's worked in administration, just about everything in sports, and was at Busting Brackets and Prep Hoops before coming over to HawgSports. And we had like 40 people apply for the job, and Curtis is the guy that stood out. Arkansas baseball, we touched on that a little bit, but they won the series over Texas A&M. It's still ranked number 1 in SEC power rankings. I guess they're number 1 nationally, aren't they? But 30-6 overall, 11-4 in SEC play right now, which is first in the division. But yeah, they dropped the Sunday game 11-10. Number 2 is Vanderbilt. Number 3 is Mississippi State. Number 4 is Tennessee. Number 5 is Ole Miss. 6 South Carolina. 7 Florida. 8 Georgia. 9 Alabama. 10 LSU. 11 Kentucky. 12 A&M. 13 Auburn. 14 Missouri. And that's it. Bobby Petrino, just a few housekeeping things here and there. Bobby Petrino and Missouri State has made the FCS playoffs. They went 5-1 in Missouri Valley play. If Bobby Petrino stays there after next season, 2022, Arkansas is scheduled to play them. Bobby Petrino could come back to Arkansas in 2022 as an opposing head coach. Wouldn't that be wild? Matt Howe came out with college football's top 25 helmets. Arkansas was disrespected by finishing 11th. Now, having said that, it is good from a national perspective that somebody saw Arkansas, as 11th when it comes to helmets. My personal opinion, if Arkansas were like winning at a bigger clip, maybe a little bit better historical winning, then they would be inside the top 5 and possibly number 1 where they belong. So here's the top 10 helmets. Arkansas is 11th again. USC. USC belongs there, sure. A lot of historic success. I can understand that. They got a nice, unique look, unique logo. Florida State, that's a pretty iconic helmet, number 9. LSU, number 8. A little plain, but there's a tradition there. It's not a bad-looking lid. Texas, 7th. Michigan, 6th. I think Michigan might have got a little undervalued. I mean, everybody knows Michigan when they see Michigan on TV. They know the helmet, right? Got a good look, yellow and blue, nice complementary colors there. Good looking helmet that fits. A lot of people don't know this, but the reason Michigan's helmet looks like that is it's like the stitching from the old leather helmets incorporated over. Alabama, the only reason Alabama is there is because they're a winner, right? I mean, it's almost as plain as you can get with numbers on the side, stripe down the middle. That's how we had it at Sheridan when I was in high school, except for it was blue and yellow, blue and gold. Miami, number 4, I can get behind that. I mean, Miami has a good-looking helmet with the U on the side, double stripe down the middle. Notre Dame, number 3. I like the new Notre Dame helmets. Now, they had the old helmets with the the gold flakes in them, and the student managers, I guess, would paint them. I think that's how it worked before the games. And they had to go away from that for this look, but I like the gold. It matches the dome. It's shiny. It was at a time when everybody was going with the flat look, which I think is played now. But, I mean, even Arkansas has gone from the satin look back to the pearl style. But, yeah, Notre Dame, good-looking helmet. Penn State, I mean, again, it comes back to tradition. It's a clean look. I like Penn State's nice, clean, traditional look. But generally, what are we talking about? A white helmet with a blue stripe, number 2. And Ohio State. Ohio State gets some credit for the Buckeye. I don't love their colors or anything, but I understand, when it comes to tradition, and they have a pretty iconic look there. So Arkansas 11th. Again, I'll tell you what's different here, though, which you'll notice. You got Arkansas 11th and 10. USC, historical power. Florida State, historical power. LSU, historical power. Texas, historical power. Michigan, Alabama, Miami, Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State. All historical powers, and then there's Arkansas. It says a lot. Keep that in mind, because this is also a list that's influenced by that historical. I mean, obviously Notre Dame. Alabama, Penn State. There's nothing flashy about those helmets. So, good credit for Arkansas there. I thought this was interesting. Felipe Franks, this one NFL scout, sees him possibly, if it doesn't work out for him at quarterback, working out at tight end. I mean, he's 6'6 plus, 235 or so, 240. Big kid, ran in the 4.55 range. 82-inch wingspan. I could see that possibly. If it doesn't work out for Felipe at quarterback, maybe look at him at tight end. All right. We got some questions. How long have we gone here? I feel like we've been talking for a while. My voice is starting to get we've gone 52 minutes. No wonder. All right. I guess we could see if we got any notable questions here. Oh, questions aren't showing up. It's one of those days where Facebook isn't showing up questions. And that's fine today. I mean, I've gone over pretty much all my thoughts, so I hate if I miss some of the stuff from you guys. But I do want to say, do the free VIP day today. Check it out. Check out the free VIP day. You'll be glad you did. Again, there's no sign up or anything. You just go to the site and start clicking buttons, right? We just left the door unlocked. That's all. No sign up. Nobody's going to make you do anything. Just come read the free content. Enjoy it. It's our way of saying thank you for checking out all our content. I mean, we have we're two dual revenue stream type of business, right? We have our VIP recruiting insider information stuff, our premium message board, that side of things. And then we do a lot of free stuff, all right, which we generate ad revenue on. And it's just our way of saying thank you for reading our free content. Now come check out our VIP stuff, and we might have something special for you tomorrow. All right, I want to thank Keith Grayson for joining us, providing his fan insight. I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. I think we covered everything I wanted to cover. Yeah. All right, everybody. Be back with you guys maybe Thursday. We'll see. Maybe we have Curtis Wilkerson on, do a little more basketball stuff. You never know. They're still involved in the transfer market, so we may do the Hog Hoops live show on Thursday or later, just depending on how things shake out. But, yeah, I pretty much did it. All right, everybody. Appreciate you joining me. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com. Check out our free day, and we'll catch you next time.